It's Spoilerin Time, folks. This is the show where we take all the hard work we do on our other show, Cordkillers, figuring out how to watch things, watch them, and talk about them. This week, we're going to talk about the Larry Sanders Show, episodes 13 and 14 of season 4, Larry's Big Idea and Beverly and the Prop Job. We're also going to talk about episode 1 of the HBO series, I Know This Much Is True, and we will say things about the last days of American crime, the movie from Netflix. I'm Tom Merritt. That laughing man is Brian Brushwood.
No, the laughing man was Bryce Castillo.
Oh, was that Bryce? I'm sorry.
But I can understand why
Bryce,
you would think it would be me.
Yeah.
Should we dive into it?
Yeah.
Let's start with the last days of American crime. I want to start with an email from John Earl Robinson, who says, "Wow, I liked it. I gave it 7 out of 10. What? Some people said it was too long. No, it isn't. I never felt like skipping through it. Some people said it doesn't make sense. Even the 2 suicide pills were explained at the very end. He used them to fry his brain so he could defeat the ATI signal. Some people said his character plays no part in the plot. He helped understand why some police did not want to lose their jobs. Number 4, where did the billion go? What did not blow away was left in the truck for the Canadian police to find. A movie without logic. I believe I followed the whole progression of events. And poor crime comic book graphic novel adaptation. So this may be the source of the bad reviews. They love the original too much." That is the only positive review of Last Days of American Crime that we could find. Thank you, John Earl Robinson, for sending that our way. What did you think of the Last Days of American Crime, Brian?
But I'm going to say very little. First of all, I'm going to confess, I still have 40 minutes to go.
40 minutes!
But don't worry, that's only 20% of the rest of the show. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes. Like very clearly it was over. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm just going to head on over to, and then I hit a button and I was like, 39 minutes. Separately, I want to propose part of why this is so confusing and interesting is because of the uncanny valley. All I want to do is talk about the things that are genuinely good about this. Genuinely good. I thought the cinematography was genuinely good. I thought everything was framed in a very it looked like an expensive, good movie.
Sure.
Right?
I thought you were going to say everything was framed right. Nobody's head was cut off, but no, you're right.
No. I mean that sincerely. I'm not
Gotcha.
being coy. I think that the special effects, there's a couple of CGI things. I'm like, but outside of that, I mean, big old cars banging into each other, flying all around, all that stuff. I mean, that also feels like a multi-million-dollar budget movie. And weirdly, I think all of the actors did the very best that they could with the lines they were given. I felt like they all really tried to sell it.
They followed the words of Gandalf. All you can do is what you can do with the time you are given.
Having said all of that, it was as though somebody took a 3-minute Rick and Morty sketch and decided that it belonged 100 times longer and made it into a 2-hour, 40-minute movie. And it's like, oh, that's great. And it's longer because there's more underneath. No, there's not. It's just, this is all unironic and you're not. Okay. And that's about where I ended up.
I agree with 5 of John Earl Robinson's points. Maybe people were too attached to the graphic novel. Maybe that's why they didn't like it. I didn't think it was totally illogical. I didn't have problems with where did the billions go or characters playing no. You can always, if you don't like something, you can always pick at stuff like that and make it sound worse or find things that were weakness. If you like it, you can forgive those things or explain why they're not confusing. The only one that I can disagree with from Mr. Robinson is intensely boring, because he said, no, it isn't. And I say, yes, it is. And that's just a difference of opinion. John's not wrong, but neither am I. I started watching this movie And within 20 minutes, I realized it's not bad enough to have fun with because it doesn't have glaring plot holes. But it wasn't good enough to hold my interest. I was never intrigued with an interesting twist. I was never surprised. I was never captivated by a world that was created. None of the things that hook me into even badly told stories were there. It was a perfectly average movie. Good cinematography.
I'm sorry. Yeah, 1 second, sir. Look, we just got this back from the focus group. They're saying that there's no plot twists. We talked about this in the writer's room. There is definitely a plot twist every 4 minutes. That's in the agenda. There's definitely a plot twist every 4 minutes. That's why you don't care about anything, because when you know that everything's about to be upended.
That's why I said it the way I did, is there was never a plot twist that intrigued me, that made me care. Right. There was never something where I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And it's me. Like, maybe you watched it and were like, yeah, that didn't bother me. I loved it. It was a great romp. I suppose that could be true. No one seems to agree with that for the most part. But I think that's why it got 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. Is it's not a bad movie like The Room where you can have fun with it, but it's also not exceptional. It doesn't rise above. It's like, that's why I was saying it's perfectly average. And
for all the things that it wants to be, it is a mediocre take on that, right? It is a mediocre heist movie. None of the heist happens until an hour into it, and then the heist that they do you never really.
It's a mediocre episode of Black Mirror. It's a mediocre.
It's a mediocre action film. It's a mediocre Narcos. Like, there's no action for the first hour of this, unless you count the sex scene within the first half hour.
I always judge things I watch by, did I find myself involuntarily checking my phone? Did I find myself involuntarily thinking about something else and going, oh wait, what just happened? This had me playing Animal Crossing for the last 45 minutes.
45. You held out. I was.
Oh, I left it on, Bryce. Yeah. I wouldn't say I held out. I don't know that I could really tell you what was happening in that last 40 minutes. And maybe that means I shouldn't get to judge it because I didn't stick with it. But I was that uninterested that I'm like, okay, I guess they're going to Canada. Okay, fine.
And what's funny is I'm okay with the word. You know what it is? I think the alpha and omega is straight up the pacing. I think there's a really good 75-minute movie in this 2.5 hour extravaganza.
There is a lot of unnecessary conversations and scenes in this film.
So much talking. Yeah, that's a good point. So
much like, we need to go over here and talk now. Now a new group of people need to go to this other place and talk. Like, that's not I hate to be very reductionist about action movies, but golly, there should be some action.
If you're going to have that much talking, you have to have a lot more depth.
A very good reason to do it.
You get rid of the talking and focus on the action. Or both, but not neither.
Okay, so I made the mistake of showing my children. So
this film?
No. Parts of it, yes.
That would not be the sex scene.
Yes. Separate issue. So we were having a conversation about recently. A Bob and David sketch got, unmade from history on Netflix because it involved blackface. And I wondered how long until they come for Always Sunny in Philadelphia, because, of course, they, out of their love for the character's love for Lethal Weapon, there's arguments over whether or not you can or cannot do blackface or whatever. And then, of course, they do blackface and so on. So we end up watching Lethal Weapon 6, the episode of Always Sunny in Philadelphia, except for the end, which shows full penetration sex.
Where are you going with this?
After watching that, I realized I could not tell the difference between this movie and Always Sunny in Philadelphia's Lethal Weapon 6. It was as though somebody was, it was as though somebody who had no sense of pacing, tempo, storytelling, writing, editing, but clearly had something that they loved, wanted to make a movie and strangely had all the money in the world and in a good budget and was able to do amazing special effects.
Yeah, Netflix money. And the director of this movie has, directed some well-reviewed movies like Taken 2 and other movies. So
the writer was the showrunner of Stranger Things season 1.
Yeah.
There
Sometimes you need someone with vision. Maybe this is one of those rare examples where you needed notes from an executive.
Yeah.
His name is Oliver Megaton.
Olivier Megaton.
Olivier Megaton.
Sorry. Okay.
What is really interesting about this?
He did Columbiana.
This is ostensibly a sci-fi heist, and the science really gets the back seat in the car here.
I mean, not any more than The Purge, right? I mean,
But The Purge is one concept, right? Like 12 hours, murder's legal.
Here's the thing.
But here
you can come up with all kinds of things like that. And if it had been better in other aspects, I wouldn't mind, right? That's not the problem. The problem is it doesn't do anything to redeem itself.
I mean,
it's like, sure, okay, the science could be weak if you had a great action movie. Fast and Furious science is horrible. Sure. I don't care because it's a fun movie.
Okay.
All of them.
Here's what it succeeds as. If what you want is a sequence of 4-minute vignettes, each one of which a walking stereotype, well produced, with pretty colors, this is the movie for you.
What? If you are 4 years old and are craving visual stimuli, The Last Days of American Crime gets 2 big baby thumbs up.
The opening sex scene where she's like, "Oh, looks like I got something to like." It makes so much more sense if you picture it from the Always Sunny crew, where he's like, "Oh, looks like there's something I gotta check off my list. Have sex, very unsexy sex scene in a bathroom."
What was on the list, Brian?
By the way, what was on the list? Oh, have sex with a loser. Right? like when you look at it that way, it's perfect.
Yeah, I think this should have been on Quibi.
I have to say, I appreciate John's email for one reason, which is that he reminded me that there is no reason that we followed that cop at all. Brian, I know you haven't finished the movie. Guess what? He doesn't. He doesn't come back.
Like that dude is just like, anyway, I'm not really in this movie, but I want back on the force.
Right.
Okay, here's the form. Oh, all right. Have it on my desk tomorrow. And will do.
I don't play by the rules.
I feel like that is like a sequel hook. Like, oh, now the new days of American crime, and the cops all have implants, but there's this one crazy cop who shouldn't have gotten the implant. Like, I feel like he was a sequel hook because he's not in the movie. There's no reason for him to be in it. Okay. He's not. You would think he would be in on the plan, right? Like in an Ocean's movie, right? Like, oh, we're spending time with him because he's going to be part of the heist. No,
I just realized there's no stopping it. We're to this part of the conversation. Dude walks in and says, "Dad, why did you, I hate you so much. No, everything's fine. We're like, yeah, but you're a piece of garbage. Why are you always calling me a piece of garbage? I just killed my dad. It's part of the plan. Don't worry about it."
And also just his sister, too. Just shoot the sister, too. Why
Rando, shoot my sister. Also, after explaining how I could see her cooch,
Yeah, he does.
He calls his sister kind of slutty because he's like, I can see her hoo-ha up there. Don't worry, I'll kill you in 10 minutes.
None of these things are the problem.
But they're though. Yes, Tom, I know that they're not the problem. The problem is the script.
The problem is cancer. The symptom is the lumps all over our lymph nodes.
But let me poke at the lumps a little bit, please. Let me flick at it.
Stop poking at the lumps. It's not going to heal. This movie is not going to heal. All right. Any?
Give me a moment.
Yep.
I'm trying to.
All
I'm
right.
trying.
Here's
to
a
just
question for you, Brian. Are you going to finish the last half hour of The Last Days of American Crime?
It sounds like I shouldn't.
I mean, you might as well. In for a penny, in for a pound.
Whoop, whoop, whoop,
Whoop, whoop, whoop, whoop, whoop.
What was the point of having a main character?
A main character who gets no character development, goes nowhere. It's a very Netflixy thing, and I don't think that this is any mandate, but it's another instance of like, hey, we have a cast, let's make the main character boring as hell.
Well, like neutral, as beige as can be, or
right?
Whatever, right? Whereas like this is where the player character goes. Everyone else is an NPC.
Right, but also they don't do anything to make him feel relatable. They just make him an empty pair of boots. My brother. Anyway, Last Days of American Crime.
I can't even hate it, and I think that's the most indicting, awful thing I can say about it.
Right.
I can't
it's not
even bring
bad
myself
enough
to hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's mediocre.
Yeah.
Could we save this movie? Could we fix this movie?
Yes.
I
Do you think
an
that
edit.
the wood is in there?
I think you could edit this into a like, you know, like Brian's been saying.
Awesome.
Like,
Black Mirror episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But as it is, I can't even hate it.
All right. That's The Last Days.
Man, I just
of
feel sad. Yeah. Okay. All right. Give me something more uplifting.
Sorry. Instead, we're going to talk about I Know This Much Is True, episode 1. Before you start, Brian, I want to say that I watched this episode and I thought, wow, this is a very deep and complex story. It's the exact opposite of The Last Days of American Crime. Wow, Mark Ruffalo is doing an amazing job portraying twins in a way that is not the like, let's cheat and call them twins so we can have the same actor play both, but two very subtle and complex different twin characters. I also thought, man, I don't know that I'm enjoying watching this at all. It's too hard, but also I don't know if I'm benefiting from watching this right now. Like, I don't know that it's the kind of thing where I'm like, well, it's not enjoyable, but it's important to watch. I'm not sure that that was the case for me. Brian, I know this hit you on a very personal level.
Yeah. Let me say, first of all, I'll absolutely confess, I couldn't make it through the first episode. And part of that was because I waited to the last minute, which now that I think about it, I think there was a reason that I was waiting till the last minute to get there, right? Having said that, the reason I couldn't finish it or have not finished it, and I think I will, I think I'll watch the entire series, is it was so good and awful and powerful. And, I mean, it's great art, and great art is challenging. It just so happens that this great art was a bit of a double black diamond for me in a way that I was unprepared for. Does that make sense? Like it was the difficulty rating was heavier than I was prepared for, which is why I only got halfway through it. But it's very good. It's very, very good.
I talk all the time about how we all experience art differently because we all bring our own experiences into it. And this is one that pretty much any experience that you bring into it is going to be a traumatic one. That's every viewer of this, if they get anything out of this, is going to say, remember that time when you went through a horrible experience of some sort. And so it does not surprise me.
And I suspect that they gave a wide enough spread that I'm not the only one who feels like this was speaking directly to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My guess is it was designed to feel that way to an awful lot of people. But it was powerful enough that I couldn't finish the course, and I'm going to get back on that. I'm going to watch the rest of it. I think it's very, very powerful, very good art. Just little more challenging than I was prepared for.
I don't want to sound disrespectful to the show. I'm glad it's only 6 episodes, though.
Well, I mean, yeah, hard things should be shorter. That's what makes them. I mean, nobody wants a 6 mile double black diamond mogul ridden, ski course. Like, you're glad it's short, and you're glad you made it through it.
I will say,
go ahead, Bryce.
I appreciated how dense this episode is, right? Like, we see kind of the whole arc pretty much with this manuscript. And I think like that character interaction, basically the 2 or 3 character interactions that Tom has with the translator are like really fascinating and wrap up in without really like stretching it out too much. I mean, we pretty much see the conclusion of that by the end of the episode, and you know, seeing the ex-wife and all that stuff, even bouncing around in you know, as kids or right before the incident and then right after the incident and jumping back and forth between that. Like, for as dense as it was, I also didn't feel lost within it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unlike a certain sci-fi 2.5 hour movie that we've talked about.
It would have almost been a mercy to feel a little lost, because then you wouldn't feel every second of I know this much is true. That is the mercy of Last Days of American Crime, is that you don't feel it, I guess.
Also,
so yeah.
I don't know. Really, also, just great tension. Like the last sequence, I know you haven't seen that, Brian, but that final sequence where they're transferring him to the other facility is like unending and so frustrating, and you completely empathize with Dom.
This is a series, I can tell, that is never going to let up. It's never going to give you space to recover. It's going to keep coming at you, and it's hard. And if you watch hard things like that, you want to come away with a greater understanding of something, like a point of view or an emotion. And I'm sure I will. I'm just not convinced that if we weren't watching this for the show, that I would prioritize this particular lesson right now. That's
a fair point. I think it's fair to say that we sort of picked it because we happen to have an opening on the schedule. I don't know that any of the 3 of us would seek out this kind of story, and yet you could tell that this story comes from a very deep, important place to the people who wrote it, produced it, acted in it. You know, and you could smell the reality behind all of this, whether or not it's this particular MacGuffin.
Yeah, this is a show that definitely has a very strong vision behind it. Yeah. All right, that's I Know This Much Is True, episode 1. Let's talk about the Larry Sanders Show. Boy, these episodes feel very light suddenly. Episodes 13 and 14, Larry's Big Idea and Beverly and the Prop. They're actually heavier episodes for Larry, I guess. Larry decides to feature the staff on the show, not the heavier of the 2, but it's him imitating Letterman, which they got some footage from an actual Letterman of the era, and also Letterman to do a little guest pop at the very end. But it's, you know, Larry chasing the trend and saying, well, let me do something too. And then turning all of his staff into monsters because now they're on camera. This reminded me quite a bit of working at Tech TV, where we had some executives that fought very hard against allowing staff on camera with these very reasons that Artie was expressing involved. Then there was Beverly and the Prop Job, which was, you know, surprisingly topical for when we watched it, because it's about Beverly's brother pointing out the institutional racism at the Larry Sanders Show, convincing her to look for another job with Lawrence Fishburne or Arsenio, and then bringing it back around where Larry realizes he wants Beverly to stay.
So of the 2, which of these did you like better?
I thought Larry's Big Idea was the more fun of the 2. I really liked Beverly and the Prop Job until the very end. I thought it was disappointing. Not that they had Beverly ask for her brother to not have the prop job anymore because he was bugging her, but how they did it. It kind of turned into a careful what you wish for when you ask for your rights, which felt smug and undermined what I thought was a fairly decent handling, certainly for 1995, of the issue otherwise.
That's interesting because, man, I'm gonna have to think about that. And please, nobody hold anything I'm about to say against me. That's defensible in court. Like at the time of the mid 90s, and I think a lot of how we think about this is where we were in the time. I don't know. It feels like all of this feels like too dangerous territory given the fact that we're not in the mid 90s.
Yeah, right.
I will say what I really, really liked about Larry's Big Idea is how of the moment of YouTube and internet media it felt, right? Everybody sees like, well, I saw so-and-so doing a thing. Why don't we try doing that? And I'm not going to lie, like if anything, I think it's more permissible now, especially in a post, let's say, Always Sunny in Philadelphia. We were just talking about that, where it's like, yeah, we're just going to, what if the gang made Lethal Weapon? How bad and terrible would it be? Let's play with that. I liked how familiar that episode felt. Didn't like the conclusion that it was, necessarily lazy or bad. I mean, I don't know. Part of me would love to try on stuff that other shows do and feel better about that. And I think that it's not a bad thing to do, or it's less perceived as bad now than it was in the mid 90s, where it's like, no, don't copy other people's things.
Well, what I got out of Larry's Big Idea was not just that they were copying, but that they were just copying.
Right.
In other words, he wasn't saying, "Oh, that's an interesting idea. The way I would do it better is," it was like, "Oh, that's an interesting idea. Let's do that." And I liked the button on this one where he goes back to just the normal way, and Letterman is shown like, he's making us all look bad. And the implication being, we're going to have to figure out a response to this. And to me, the point of this episode was everybody's always looking at what everybody else is doing and trying to figure out how to respond to it.
Yeah. And in some way, I feel like it's a 15 years ahead of its time foreshadowing of, YouTube meme culture or the ice bucket challenge or any of those things that come in waves where the only reason you're doing it is because you saw somebody else doing it.
There is an interesting undercurrent of collaborativeness to YouTube that I don't think people pay as much attention to because there's all the drama. But, the ice bucket challenge, stuff like that is built on the idea of, oh, I want you to copy me. That's how we both win. Right? You copy me, I copy you, you on my show, I on you show. Let's make a meme take off and then we'll both ride the wave. Whereas here, Larry's Big Idea is in a world of corporate monoliths where you don't cooperate with each other. That's crazy. Like,
well, and
there's not infinite space like there is post-content democratization.
Yeah. And also certainly the idea that the mere fact that you are copying me honors me. Like that most certainly was not a thing in the early 90s.
Definitely not. Right. Again, because there's not space for everybody to do whatever. And so if you're copying me, now you're stealing the limited space in this world.
Or people will think, because, who watches all the late night shows, people will think this was your idea.
That's the other thing, right? You can't watch both.
Yeah.
You have to pick. It's broadcast. Maybe you videotape one of them, but most people don't.
Larry does, but yeah.
Yeah, no. I definitely resonated more with Larry's Big Idea. Beverly and the prop job, it felt a little bit, I don't know.
It felt like a kind of flip take on the issue. Like we've seen Larry Sanders kind of do slightly more serious takes on, twice now with homosexuality, where this felt a little more like having fun with it. right? Especially the kind of payoff at the end where Beverly doesn't want her cousin to have the job.
Well, and I can't figure out, and this is as close into heavy territory as I will allow myself, but I can't tell if the ending was somehow maybe because the argument when it comes to affirmative action is trying to demographically rebalance and do a fair and just thing to human society in general, but it was almost like that flip ending was like, psych, you were never here because you were black, you were here because you're awesome, and I don't know. I don't know. Is that just me?
Well, I think that's. Go ahead, Bryce.
Well, it's interesting because we don't see him like bad at his job. She wants him gone because he's annoying her. Yeah. Right. We don't really find out whether he's good or not. Right. She just doesn't like her family. Working in the same building and annoying him.
I can think of all different kinds of ways where it doesn't bug me to end this. One would be like, why did it have to be my brother to take this job? And then that's suddenly not, can you fire this? I'm careful what you wish for. It's, family is annoying, but that's a stumbling block on the road to progress. And maybe that wouldn't have been that much better, but it feels like it wouldn't have rubbed me as much the wrong way, where it didn't feel like any of the lessons that Beverly's situation, I thought, laid out for 1995 very well. I felt like they didn't get fruition. Even if they don't have to get Larry learning his lesson. In fact, usually Larry doesn't learn his lesson. That's part of how they illustrate this stuff. Or Hank doesn't learn his lesson. But if everyone else got it except Larry, and everybody now understood, like, oh wait, Larry, you're still being this way, I would have felt better. But it didn't feel like any of that happened. It felt like they undermined some of the good, light that Beverly was shining on a complex issue.
It did force me to briefly consider essentially a ranking of everybody on the show in terms of like how complete and awesome of a person are they, and Beverly is certainly top 3. Like Larry's a piece of garbage, Hank's a piece of garbage, maybe Hank's assistant Brian, top 3. Janine Garofalo, Artie is God. He's not even in the. But
in terms of being most essential, most indisposable,
or most complete, right? And also like good people, like the best, whatever that means.
Beverly's a good person. Sure.
Like Beverly might be the best. Janine Garofalo is close, but that's probably because I saw her when I was 17 and will never shed the strange feelings I had in that moment.
They're not that strange. I get it. Yeah, perfectly understandable. All right, that's Beverly and the prop job and Larry's big idea. Do we have a tease for next week?
Yeah, I think we'll be watching the Hulu original film Big Time Adolescence.
Excellent.
Not the movie with Pete Davidson that everyone is talking about, but the one before that one.
Okay. And also Larry Sanders Show episodes 15 and 16 of season 4. And I Know This Much Is True, episode 2. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for letting us spoil you silly. You spoil us by supporting us at patreon.com/Cordkillers, and we appreciate it. We'll spoil you again next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.